Right now, as you're sitting there watching this, there is a staggering number of completely independent entities operating inside of you. 37 trillion. That's 37 followed by 12 zeros. 37 trillion individual, living units all communicating, working, and thriving in this vastly complex biological symphony, literally just so you can breathe, think, and exist. It's a number so awe-inspiring, it kind of breaks the mind a little bit.
So, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are all about cells. We're unlocking the mysteries of the fundamental, microscopic building blocks of all living organisms. We're going to explore their secret lives, the incredible machinery that keeps them running, and the absolute rules that govern their existence.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with the building blocks of life, move into the anatomy of a cell, compare prokaryotes and eukaryotes, look at discovering the microscopic world, and finish up with how cells reproduce.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the building blocks of life.
By definition, a cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all organisms. You can really just think of it as life's smallest common denominator. So, whether you are looking at a giant redwood tree, a golden retriever, a blade of grass, or even the bacteria chilling on your kitchen counter, every single living thing is made of cells. If you break any organism down to its absolute simplest living component, this is exactly what you get. Our sources use this brilliant analogy that I absolutely love. They describe cells as mini fiefdoms, because even though they're microscopic, they have all the equipment and expertise necessary to carry out the functions of life completely on their own. A single cell can eat, it can grow, it can move around in response to its environment, a process called chemotaxis. It performs its own maintenance, recycles its parts, gets rid of waste, and even replicates itself. It is, quite literally, a fully functioning, self-sustaining little world.
But, don't be lulled into thinking every cell is just this tiny, invisible dot. While it's true most cells are way too small to see without a microscope, they can actually exist in some really wild shapes and sizes. To put that into perspective, a single human nerve cell inside your own body can be over a meter long. That means one cell can stretch all the way from your spine, all the way down to your big toe. One continuous, living unit. How crazy is that?
Which brings us to Section 2, anatomy of a cell.
Okay, so every fiefdom needs a border wall, right? For the cell, that's the cell membrane or the plasma membrane. It acts as this very clear boundary separating the cell's watery interior, which we call the cytoplasm, from the chaotic outside world. Now, this membrane is built from these fat-based molecules called phospholipids, and they physically prevent water-loving substances from just flowing in and out whenever they want. Instead, the membrane is studded with these special proteins that act like strict bouncers at a club. They selectively decide exactly what nutrients get to enter and what waste products get kicked out.
Now, inside that watery cytoplasm, the cell basically relies on four major classes of organic molecules to survive. First up, you have nucleic acids. That's your DNA and RNA, the genetic code. Second, proteins, which act as both the physical building blocks and the enzymes that make things happen. Third, carbohydrates. Think starches and sugars used for energy and cell recognition. And finally, lipids or fats, which make up those membranes we just talked about and store long-term energy. These four molecules are the absolute essential toolkit of life.
But the interior of many cells isn't just some free-floating soup of molecules. It's actually partitioned off into specialized little rooms, enclosed by their own membranes. We call these organelles. And just like the organs in your own body, organelles have highly specific, technical jobs. A perfect example, and you've probably heard this one before, is the mitochondria. The mitochondria acts as the dedicated power plant for our little cellular fiefdom, generating the chemical energy required to keep the whole operation running smoothly.
Let's move on to Section 3, prokaryotes versus eukaryotes.
So biologists draw a huge, crucial distinction between two main types of cells, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes, which include things like bacteria and archaea, are the simpler of the two. They don't have a defined nucleus. Their DNA is just kept loose in the cytoplasm on a single circular strand, and they're pretty much always single-celled organisms. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, are the complex ones. They can be up to 1,000 times larger in volume. The big deal here is that eukaryotes protect their genetic information, their DNA, inside a secure, dedicated, membrane-bound VIP room called the nucleus. Eukaryotic cells are the ones that team up to make complex multicellular life. You, me, plants, animals, we are all eukaryotes.
But hey, do not mistake the simplicity of prokaryotes for weakness. Not at all. These are the ancient survivors of our planet. They evolved way before eukaryotes did, and they can survive in environments that are frankly unimaginable. There are actually certain bacterial species that thrive in boiling thermal vents along the pitch-black ocean floor, places where absolutely no other life could possibly endure. And they pull this off without even having a nucleus.
Next up, Section 4, Discovering the Microscopic World.
Knowing everything we know now, you kind of have to wonder, how did humanity first figure out this hidden universe even existed? Well, it all goes back to the invention of the microscope. Back in 1665, an English scientist named Robert Hooke was using a double-lens microscope to look at a simple piece of cork. And when he zoomed in, he saw these tiny, empty compartments. They actually reminded him of the small, simple walled-in rooms that monks lived in inside monasteries. So he used the Latin word cella, meaning room, he called them cells, and the name just stuck.
It's fascinating to see how this discovery builds across history. A few years after Hooke's discovery, in the 1670s, another scientist named Antony van Leeuwenhoek used his own custom single-lens microscopes and discovered actual living, moving microorganisms. He playfully called them animalcules. For the next 2 centuries, naturalists and philosophers just kept peering through these lenses, trying to make sense of it all. This finally culminated in the 1800s when scientists like Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow brought all these scattered observations together into one unified scientific framework.
And that framework became known as the cell theory. It basically gave us the fundamental checklist for life on Earth. Number 1, all living things are made of cells. Number 2, the cell is the basic structural unit of all organisms. Number 3, every cell comes from another cell that lived before it, meaning spontaneous generation is a total myth. And number 4, which was added a bit later as biology advanced, cells carry genetic information in the form of DNA, which gets passed directly from parent to daughter cell. These aren't just guidelines, these are the absolute, unbreakable rules of biology.
And that leads us perfectly into our final section, Section 5, How Cells Reproduce.
Because eukaryotes and prokaryotes are built so differently, it makes sense that they divide differently too. The body cells of complex eukaryotes divide through a highly choreographed process called mitosis, or meiosis if we're talking about specialized sex cells. Simpler prokaryotic cells, they keep it a bit more direct. They use a process called binary fission. It's a form of asexual reproduction where the cell simply copies its DNA and literally just splits right down the middle in half.
When you actually observe a mammalian oocyte, an egg cell, undergoing cell division, it's incredible. You can literally see a smaller cellular body physically separating from the main cell. I think seeing it like this grounds those abstract textbook rules of reproduction into a tangible, deeply beautiful biological reality that is happening inside living things right under our noses.
But here's the thing to remember. Whether it's a massive eukaryotic nerve cell undergoing complex mitosis or a tiny prokaryote splitting via binary fission in a boiling ocean vent, the ultimate goal is exactly the same. The primary objective is replication. It's all about passing down a complete, flawless copy of the genetic blueprint, the DNA. That way, the new daughter cell has the exact instructions it needs to survive, thrive, and start the whole cycle all over again.
So we end this explainer right back where we began. You are made of 37 trillion of these microscopic fiefdoms. And here is the question I really want to leave you with today. How do 37 trillion completely independent, totally mindless microscopic entities somehow collaborate, signal each other, and organize perfectly to create the conscious, breathing, thinking person that is sitting there watching this right now? It is the ultimate biological symphony, and honestly, the deeper you look into it, the more wondrous it becomes. Keep exploring and never lose your sense of wonder.